Alright, we're moving on to the Underlegion Uncommons. And starting off here, we got the Cheery Deathcap. Now, I'm generally not a gigantic fan of these type of cards necessarily, because they're so reliant on Endless or being paired with like Reform to truly pop off. But all that being said, of these type of cards, Cheery Deathcap I think is a pretty good one. It does quite a large amount of decay. To some degree you could compare it to a consumable card that would do similar damage. Like if you saw a 1-cost consume card that just did decay 7 AoE, you'd probably take that decently often. I think I'd still take that spell more often than Deathcap, but because it just has more upside with the Merchant of Magics. Obviously you would need consume remove to simulate like Endless, but there's like, I don't know, I think the problem with Cheery Deathcap is its upgrades other than Endless. Obviously you could put dualism on it, and I've done that before and it's pretty good, but your dualism is competing with banner units upgrades, right? Whereas the Merchant of Magic upgrades aren't really competing with anything else other than spells. But tangents aside, just trying to give a general sense of the value. It's pretty good value for 1 Ember and only needing 1 pip. The problem is Underlegion often just doesn't actually have pip to spare, even 1 pip in my experience. Unless you get lucky with Smidge Stones or you're running like Bogworm Pyre, or maybe you're paired with Umbra or something. But outside of those, it can be hard just to get this unit down on a floor that you care about. And then again, you can also just put it on a floor you don't care about in a lot of cases. That being said, Underlegion is one of those clans where I might be likely to run 3 floors sometimes, so that still isn't necessarily something I can do. So there is some downsides there, but overall, I gotta say it's pretty good value. Just does a lot of damage for what it does, and it does have pretty big upside if you can get Endless on it. And if you can get Endless and Dualism on it, you're doing crazy amounts of damage with this thing. I've definitely used it to great effect on many runs. It feels like somewhere between A and B to me. I'm gonna let it sit in B plus for now. I'll reassess afterward and see if it makes sense to move it to A. Certainly no lower than B though. It's pretty good. Then you got Truffle. Truffle is a hard one to evaluate, I think. It's a fun card, but it's just not reliable, I would say. It's kind of a card where it's like, well, I could take it and have some fun with it, and I can take with it, and sometimes it will do some crazy good stuff for me, but a lot of times it's just bricking. There's just a lot of equipment that aren't going to be useful to Underlegion in particular. But obviously there's some real big hits, right? You can get some pretty good stuff from it. And then the fact that it also costs -1 helps. Cooldown's pretty high though. Cooldown of 3, it means I'm rarely relevantly using it twice in a fight, I would say. So it's kind of like taking a card that just says, spend 1, use this card, and get a random equipment, or it's almost like would you just add a card that is a random equipment to your hand, right? Because the -1 kind of offsets itself by the fact that the unit costs 1, if that makes sense. But then, yeah, of course, there are some times where either you're paired with Pyreborn, or, you put it down early, you have to top deck it, of course, and then maybe you're getting to play it 2, maybe 3 times in a fight. But for the most part, I feel like it's just like adding a random equipment to your deck at cost, pretty much, and not being able to merge it or anything, not being able to deploy it. And I don't really find that to be that good if we're strictly talking about power level and consistency. So honestly, I don't know. While it is a fun card, and there obviously can be upside, I'm going to put it in C. I don't think it's like actually that useful necessarily. And then the next unit, non-banner unit on this list is Wax Cap. And I'll be honest, I don't really like it that much. Unlike the Death Cap, I just don't think an AoE 3 sap is really that beneficial. It's weird because, I mean, AoE sap 3, you would like it in most cases on like a floor you care about, but again, do I have a pip space to spare on a floor I actually care about? See, Wax Cap doesn't have quite the upside as Death Cap, because like we said, you can just play Death Cap on a floor you don't care about. But if you're, and that's usually going to be like floor 1 or floor 2 in some cases, and if you do that with Wax Cap, you're only getting the residual sap, because if you're putting on a floor you don't care about, the immediate sap doesn't matter that much. So it's really like applying sap 2 to the floor above it when the enemies finally get up there to the floor you care about. And it's not to say that there aren't runs where I can afford to spare 1 pip space and maybe I high roll the Endless on the card, and then sure, I can actually use it. But even then, it's like, it's a lot to dedicate to just 3 sap, and of course you can put dualism, then it's at 6 sap, then it's pretty good, but I don't know. So obviously there is some upside, but if I compare it 1-to-1 with Death Cap, I definitely don't think it's as good. For me, I think it's a C tier. I don't even know that I would necessarily put it above Truffles. I just can't remember the last time I actually used that card to any great effect. I could honestly go D tier with it, honestly. It doesn't feel like it should be D tier because it technically is valuable, but as far as pick rate, it's one of my lowest pick cards for sure. I hardly ever take this card, and I just don't ever see much reason to add it to a deck. You know, in my experience, there's just way better ways to apply sap if that's what you need to do, but also just, I would just rather deal damage to the enemy. I don't think this Underlegion is lacking in defense necessarily. And then the next one on here is Dig Deep. Dig Deep's pretty good. Often with Underlegion, you are incentivized to make a big deck, and there's technically some cards that can make your deck bigger during the fight, such as like Pandemic. But yeah, Dig Deep I think is really good. It surprises me to some degree that it's not a consume card. It wouldn't be as good clearly if it was, but you know, I just compare it to similar cards, and it just seems, for instance, if I go like to the common spawning pods, which spawns 4, I only need a deck of 30 to match that with Dig Deep, and I'm almost always going to run a deck of 30 or more. That's just how I roll in Monster Train 2. I really don't need a thin deck, at least when I'm running. It's interesting. I think the Monster Train 1 clans benefit from thin decks, but these Monster Train 2 clans really don't. I think that 30 to 40 cards is completely fine. So yeah, the fact that it's same cost as that other card, which is already a decent card, but it also is not consume, it just allows you to pretty easily hold it over if you find it and put -1 Ember cost, or you can spell chain it -1 Ember cost. And it's already good at the vanilla value, but there's just a lot of upside with this card. I think it's pretty good. I almost want to put it in S, but there are enough runs where I'm not caring about, I guess, spawning Fun Guy, that maybe it's A. I don't know. I am tempted to put it in S. It feels really good to have this card, and I usually take it when I see it, but I'm going to leave it in S for now. We'll see. It may not be worth S, though. What was the next card here? Fertile Ground. So Fertile Ground has even more upside than Dig Deep, realistically, but in practicality, I don't know that it actually spawns as much, plus it consumes, right? So a big difference between Dig Deep and Fertile Ground. You know, they're essentially looking to do the same thing here, which is just spawn a bunch of fungi, trigger a bunch of rallies, or if you're building up... I actually find, for my playstyle, I usually am looking to use fungi mainly just to trigger rallies and then have a nice body out in front. I don't usually do the hyper stack, like 400 attack, fungi type game plan, but if you're doing that, certainly Fertile Ground is probably better at it, right? But either way, you know, whether you're building a big fungi or just triggering a bunch of rallies, both these cards are accomplishing the same game plan. But I think while, you know, maybe in the upper 80%, you know, the P80 or more, I'll just pull that number out of my butt. Maybe Fertile Ground can be better, but I would even say like P90. But I think below the P90, Dig Deep just usually performs better in my experience. I think if the Fertile Ground is dependent on drawing it after you've already consumed a bunch of cards, so like often you're incentivized just not to play it early, or if you do play it, it's not getting much value. And obviously you have to build a deck. It's best when you're pairing it with cards like Pandemic, but yeah, I think it just draw order becomes an issue. It's funny, there used to be a keyword. I hope they bring it back at some point, but there was basically a Merchant of Magic upgrade you could get that was the opposite of Intrinsic, and it was called Heavy. And I really liked the upgrade, but I was like pretty much the only one that did, and it allowed you to guarantee that a card was in the bottom of your deck while also like reducing the cost of it. I really liked that upgrade, and Fertile Ground is like the perfect type of card for that. You obviously just want to draw it after you've kind of gone through your deck, but all that being said, all the tangents aside, I don't know. I think it's maybe B. It feels similar to Deathcap to me. It's like it can be very good, but often it actually doesn't pop off for me or just doesn't make sense to add to a deck. And then we got Grow Room. This is a very takeable card. I think it's pretty good. At least A tier for sure. I'm just debating if it's S or not, because upside is not necessarily gigantic. But, you know, it's like half of a loam coat to your whole floor, which is pretty good for half the price. Obviously, there's no built-in regen, but I don't care about that much. It can be really good depending on your other clan. I would say that it doesn't do a whole lot for Underlegion specifically, so that's maybe the limiting factor of Grow Room is, you know, if it's only just giving you like one extra rage a turn or something, then it's not that good. But if it's giving you like one extra damage shield to every unit on the floor every turn, that's pretty good. If it's giving you one extra reanimate every turn, that's really good. So like it really just depends on your other clans and the buffs that are present. But it's always just very takeable. I'm going to put it in A for now. It does feel weird to have these on different tiers. I imagine I'm going to rearrange all this at the end, but I think that maybe just because it doesn't necessarily do a gigantic amount of work for Underlegion. It still does work, though, because, I mean, it's like, you know, one of the premier units in the clan, I would say, is Spore Launcher, and if you just have a fun guy on the floor, at the very least, it's triggering a rally every turn, which again isn't a giant thing, but it's helpful. You know, it does help a little bit just intrinsically to the clan, but more so the upside is realized with the allied clan. And then we have Inhale, which, oops, make sure I got that. Oh yeah. Yeah, so Inhale, I don't know, it's probably a card that most people like more than I do. I don't love it. Needing to get the Slay, you can usually use it. You can also use it on, obviously, your own units, I think, including your fun guy. So there is that, but I don't know. It's a good card, like objectively speaking, but obviously it just has a lot of value. But there is just some waves where it can't actually kill anything. Even if you do add like plus 10 damage to it, an example would be like a wave that has a 35 health Scourge Shuffling Chosen unit, or the 50 health Sweeper. It's like, it doesn't hit hard enough to actually deal with the threats that I would want a card like this to deal with. So it kind of feels win more to me in that sense. It's like, well, it helps me with the waves where the super squishy units are there anyway, and then sure, I can get a spawn out of it. But if I actually am relying on this card for my build, the hardest waves in the game, it actually doesn't do anything on. So that's probably why I don't actually like it that much. I think I'll put it in B though. I think these B tier cards are they're very powerful, but I just don't take them that much. It's like probably a playstyle thing. And then we got Mushroom Cloud. I think Mushroom Cloud's really good. Probably the only downside, I guess, is that it's a consume, but that's kind of a theme with Underlegion, and there's ways to get consume cards back, technically, and you could always remove the consume as well, but it's just a lot of value. I mean, we kind of talked about how if Cheery Deathcap were a card, you'd probably take it a lot. Well, this is pretty much Cheery Deathcap plus some, right? Sure, you lose one fun guy, but who cares about that? It's really like, I guess the only downside is sometimes you won't have a fun guy on the floor. And obviously, I don't know. That'd be a specific situation. I don't know why you would take the card if you can't generate some consistent fun guys, but usually you're looking at 10 flat damage and then 10 decay, which is 30 damage, so it's like 40 damage AoE at the minimum. Then obviously you can do things like spell chain it or double stack it, and then it's going to do even more. So I don't know, I think it's really valuable for one. They could probably make this a 2 cost and I would still take it a lot. I think it's definitely a good card. I'm going to put it in A for now. It's tough for me to put it in S. I don't know. We'll let it sit in A for now. Now here's one I'm probably much higher on than most, and that's Pandemic. I think Pandemic is just such a good card. It's just good at a base level. You're getting... it's so good at dealing with it. The thing... I get why people might not like it that much, because it doesn't like single-handedly deal with the threats, but it helps enough that all the other things that are going on with your deck, this is usually just a nice finishing touch, or alternatively the thing to get something started on dealing with like a tank. It's just really flexible in what it can do for you. It's like, well, I can use it to just kill a backliner. It's got enough decay for that. I can use it to help towards killing a tank. Well, maybe let's say if I don't even kill the tank necessarily, but at least I'm putting decay on it and sap, so like it will do less damage to my pyre if it leaks, and then also it will probably die faster. Maybe it only attacks me once or twice in the pyre since I also have decay on it. And then it's very good at helping with bosses. Sap becomes an incredible keyword against bosses, as does decay. It's also a card that just benefits really strongly from a few upgrades, just making it cost less or double stacking it's really powerful. And then the nut roll here is that it really interacts with some of these cards like Fertile Ground, or some of the artifacts, or that have consume triggers, or the Moral Mistress. The Moral Mistress with this card just does so much decay, and can just keep replaying it. So I think it's personally borderline S. S minus. I would put it above Dig Deep. Both these are not high S's though, I would say. I don't know. They're barely cracking S, but I think they're still really good cards. Then we got the Mushy Room, which I think is really good. It's just like, you will never come across a run that doesn't want this. It's just such an easy thing to include in a deck. Now I know that might be hypocritical of me to say when I don't rank Wax Cap that high, but the context here is like, it's just so much easier to put down a room than it is to put down a unit, and this thing just is the gift that keeps on giving. So instead of assuming no endless, it's Wax Cap is just a one and done for the same Ember, and it's easier to play since it's a room and not a unit. I get the same amount of sap, and it just keeps going every single turn. This is such a nice card to put either on like the floor below your main floor to soften up all the enemies and just greatly increase your defense, or you can just, if you're a build that's like applying a bunch of decay at the bottom floors, you can just put the Mushy Room on the top floor, and it'll often just soften the blows for any leaked tanks, to the point where they're not really damaging your pyre that much, and the decay can just finish them off. So I think it's super versatile. It's very similar to Pandemic in that sense if you're using it top floor. I think it's borderline S. It doesn't have giant upside. It's right there with Grow Room. I rank them so closely, I feel. Grow Room and Mushy Room. Even though Grow Room has higher upside, but the floor on Mushy Room I think is higher and more realized. It's just such a takeable card. I am tempted to go S, but we'll leave it A for now. Then we got Pox. Pox would be a card that would probably be good in other clans. I don't think it's very good in Underlegion though. There are times I take it, but if I compare it to like Mushroom Cloud, for example, it costs double the amount. It's still a consume anyway. And sure, it doesn't require a fun guy to exist and to be sacrificed, but it hurts all of your own units on the floor. So you basically, realistically, can only play this in most decks on an empty floor. And I just don't find that I have an empty floor that often with Underlegion. And even if I do, I don't know. I don't know that 2 cost for all of this is super worth it. I've taken it before, and it's in the decks, and it makes sense, and it definitely does well. So it's not like untakeable, it's not horrible, but I just think that it's really awkward, and I've also taken it a lot of times, and it just burns a hole in my deck. I'm just like, wow, I cannot find any situation where this is worth playing, right? And it's also just not a card I like to spend upgrades on. Obviously it could benefit from double stack and all that just the same, but it benefits from the same stuff that Mushroom Cloud would benefit from. But I don't know, if I compare it to Mushroom Cloud is just a vastly superior card in my opinion that kind of eclipses this card. D feels a little unfair, but it's definitely C for me, I would say. I just probably above these cards. I think realistically I would find more use for them than these cards slightly, but I don't know, it's definitely not as good as these cards, I would say. And the final one we have here is Mulch, which is just a fine card. It's there are some runs where if you do, have a deck that fills up with cards, you can get it to draw a lot, but realistically it's just going to be draw 2. It's like basically the old version of, I don't know, it's close to the old version of that Awoken card. The name escapes me right now, I'm not going to look it up, but the one that, you know what I'm talking about, the one that looks like a potion and it draws cards the next turn. And sorry, so it's gonna draw 2 almost guaranteed, and realistically I'll draw 3 in most of my decks because I'm doing 30 card decks usually. So And it costs 0, so in that sense it's pretty good. You can consume remove it. If maybe the nuts is that you consume remove it and then hold it over. That's unlikely, but you could get that. And then you're just drawing like a full deck every time, and that's pretty good. So there's definitely some upside, but even beyond the upside, I think the floor is pretty good. I mean, it just it's a card that's hard to skip, I would say. It's just generally going to be useful. And then obviously it helps trigger consume effects here and there pretty easily. It's one of the better cards at doing that since it's so low investment, right? So I think it's A, but I would put it below these other cards because I don't think it actually accomplishes a specific task most of the time, whereas these cards are accomplishing specific tasks. Now, do I want to move any of these around? I feel like Dig Deep is so important because it's like the most consistent spawn card, I would say. It's the only one that it doesn't consume as far as spells go. I mean, I guess you could say something like Inhale, but that has a prerequisite, whereas this has no prerequisite. And since you very often will want to have some degree of Fungi in an Underlegion deck, I think Dig Deep just always is typically going to be a good card. I'll be honest, I could almost just do this. That almost feels better. I don't know if it's fair to Underlegion to not have any in S, but I do feel like I'm maybe forcing things into S here, because I don't know that for my criteria of S, anything here necessarily meets it. That's not true. I think Pandemic does. The take ability on these three cards in particular, and I guess that one, but the take ability is just so high. Does that look better? It's because now it feels like I'm putting too much stuff into S. What about that? This feels good because here's what I'm thinking. Mulch, I guess, is an odd one out here with my logic, but my logic is right now these three S cards, I almost always take them when I see them. Sure, you're going to find me skip them every now and then, like I would any card in the game, technically. But they're usually getting taken. I could say the same for Mulch, but again, I just don't think Mulch accomplishes the things that these cards are accomplishing. And then maybe these cards I take a little bit less. Just a little bit. I think this makes sense. This is... Because honestly, Underlegion, I consider their uncommons very good. It's like, I feel really good when Underlegion hits the 4th, 5th rings. It's like, okay, I'm probably getting some good cards, so like, it does feel right to rank a few of them in S, because it feels that way when I'm playing Underlegion. It's like the deck really starts to come online at that point, typically speaking. But yeah, that's the Underlegion uncommons. As always, thanks for watching. Let me know what you think. I know I view Underlegion probably a lot differently than a lot of people do, so let me know what you think about how you would rank these cards. So, as always, thanks for watching. Until next time, peace.